All right, hello guys. Thanks for joining in to today's how-to and Q&A session here on YouTube Live. My name is Chris. I'm hosting the session for today, and it looks like we do already have some questions coming in. So I'll go ahead and start addressing those. First question here regarding the product page. It does have the option for sizes through a drop-down. They're asking, is there a way to show that in a more condensed layout where you might have input fields, for example, for small through 2XL and just have the user input those quantities against each size. So we do have that option. Let me just walk through the example here. So I'm going to open up my website here, and in the backend admin area, I'll click into the products section. So again, looking at what we currently have on the website, if I pull up one of my products here, all right, we'll see this is the current default layout for a new DecoNetwork 8 system, is to have the size drop down. You can select a size, let's say medium. Maybe I want 10 medium. And then if you want additional sizes, you choose add another size, let's say large, maybe 20 large, so on and so forth. So you add these individual sizes. The alternate layout to that, if we go back to the admin, so we've clicked into admin products, and here from the products menu, we'll choose the blank product display option. From here, down at the bottom, we have this option, multiple sizes display. Show add size is what we currently have, where you have the add size button. And the alternate option is to show all available sizes. So if we switch over to that one, hit save, and refresh our product page, we'll see that alternate layout, right? So now we have input fields from extra small all the way through extra large. All right, so hopefully that addresses that question there. And so there are benefits to each of those two different options. The input field layout is more beneficial for someone shopping from a desktop computer. So, with access to a keyboard and mouse, you can quickly switch between these input fields and, enter what those quantities are. Whereas the add size option is a little bit more optimized for mobile devices, mobile phones that input is a little bit slower on. So drop down is a little bit easier to select and things like that. So if I was on a mobile device, I could quickly select small, input my quantity, and then add sizes as I need them. So each one has its purpose. Depending on what your needs are, you could go ahead and select that option that you're interested in. All right, guys, feel free to just type in any other questions that you guys have. In the meantime, while we get some questions, I'm going to jump into a bit of a tip that we are getting a lot of questions on, and that's again related to the new DecoNetwork 8 page builder. So we're getting a lot of questions around image sizing, right? So how big are my images supposed to be, or what size are my images supposed to be for the website? And there's no straight answer to that question. It all depends on how you lay out the site, but there's a few tips that I can give here, which are going to help you to understand, how our image is sized inside of the DecoNetwork 8 page builder. There's different scenarios that will result in the image being sized differently. So the first one, we'll go ahead and use the default template here as our example. And this default template includes a large banner at the top with an image that's set as a background, right? So that's the first scenario, an image being used as the background for a container, in this case, a row. It could be, a column. A column could have a background image as well. In this case, it's the entire row going full width across the page. And the thing that you want to understand with this type of scenario is this is a fixed height banner but the width is variable, right? Right now it's this width because that's the size of my screen. If I use the size previewer here and switch to smaller monitor, you see that changes both the aspect ratio and how much of that image is visible. If I go ahead and continue that preview, if I do the tablet, you can see it cuts off more down at the bottom. And then if I get down to the mobile size, it's a lot slimmer. Right, so there's no one specific size that I could say, use this size and that's the size of this banner. It really does depend on the size of the screen that the site is being viewed from. That's in the scenario that you're using it as a background image. You have to consider how that container that the background is set on will be sized across the different screens. The other thing you want to consider with this background option, if we go into the row settings and jump into the background properties, is the image size options for that background. So right now it's set to cover. Cover ensures that there's never any empty space within that container where the background is set. So let's say it's a very wide setup. We're going to end up cropping the top and bottom of that image. And if it's a very narrow layout, we're going to end up cropping the sides of that image. So cover just ensures that the entire container is always covered up by that background. Contain works a little bit differently. Contain makes sure that the background image in its entirety is contained within that element. Right, so here we see it's making sure that the entire height of the image is within the height of that row. But in this case, you end up with this repeating of that background since the image is not large enough in terms of the aspect ratio. It's more of a, let's say, 4:3 aspect ratio, whereas this is a very wide banner, right? Maybe like 20:5 or something. You could turn off the image repeating. That's also an option that we have here in the background properties. But then you end up with these white bars along the side. So again, these different options for image size, you'll choose whichever one kind of meets what you're after in terms of look and feel. But just finishing up on the different sizes that are available to choose from, stretch doesn't always have the best effect. It's just going to stretch that image to fill, not respecting the original aspect ratio of that image. And then original maintains that original sizing for the image. The other thing that you want to consider, you can upload images at any resolution that you want. It could be a very high resolution. For example, this image here that we're looking at in the default template is uploaded at a pretty high resolution of 5760 by 3840 pixels. So that's a pretty large image. And the system by default is going to size that down. So we're going to optimize your image regardless of the size that you uploaded at. We're going to optimize it primarily for loading purposes, right? If we went ahead and selected the original size, you're going to see how slowly that comes down. So that took a few seconds for that to download. You can see with the original option set here, we barely see any of that image. It's cropped pretty tightly there with the original set. With cover, we end up with pretty similar cropping to what we had before. It is a higher fidelity image, but again, it's going to take longer for that to load on the client end. So by default, we're going to optimize. You can see if I switch back to that optimized size, it's a little bit blurrier, right? It's stretching a smaller image to fit that space. And you can switch between the different optimized sizes. So depending on your original size that you upload, you'll see different sizes here to select from. In this case, the original was fairly large, so we get quite a bit of options to choose from. All right, so you don't necessarily have to worry about an exact specific size for an image. Just upload a fairly high enough resolution image. If you're trying to fit it within a specific space, I would say try and get within the same ballpark aspect ratio, right? So if I'm doing a banner like this, I might want to make my image that same kind of very wide aspect ratio so that I don't get too much cropping. Um, and so those are some tips to keep in mind when using the background option. Now there's a few other options that you have uh, for adding an image, right? So this is the background option that we just looked at. And before I switch off of this, actually, one last option that you can set here is the image position of that background. By default, it's just center, so it's always going to be kind of aligned to the center of your image. You could do, for example, top center. So maybe you want to see the top of the image preferably, or maybe the bottom of the image, whatever the case might be, depending on the graphic that you're using. All right, so that's background image. Now, the other type of image that you can bring in is through the image widget. That's here under the media section within the widgets panel. I can go ahead and drag in an image widget. And actually, let me cancel out of that. Rather than putting it in that existing banner, let me put it right below that banner. Right, so I've dropped in an image widget down here. I can go into image settings and upload an image. And I'm actually going to select that same image of the woman with glasses. And right off the bat here, what you'll notice is as I switch, so it's the original aspect ratio. As I switch between these different screen sizes, I'm not losing any of that image, right? It's still keeping the full image. It's just scaling that down to fit the device. So that's the difference between using as a background, where you're going to overlay content on top of that background, versus an image. I can't necessarily add text on top of this image widget. This is considered content on its own, so any text would flow either above or below that image. But if you're wanting to display an image and keep its size at all times, regardless of screen size, the image widget may be the option that you're after. All right, and in this case, um, I dropped it right below that banner, so it's not filling the full width of the page, but we could do that by going into the image widget properties, going into layout properties, and setting the stretch to a full page bleed, as well as the width. All right, so that will get the image to go all the way across. All right, so there you see, again, this is an alternate layout because it's through the image widget. It's going to keep that aspect ratio, which means I can't necessarily set the height on this. So it does take up quite a bit of the screen here. So if this was an image that I was embedding, um, the image widget you don't necessarily want to use for very large images like this. You might want to do it for more narrow type banner images or things like that. All right, and with the image widget, as far as what size you might want to use, some of the same ideas apply that we talked about with the background option, except with the image widget, there is the potential case where you're wanting to display an image at a specific size on your website. And in that case, you'll know what that size is. Let's say I want to display an image at 400 by 400 pixels, right? So you'll open up Corel Paint or Adobe Photoshop, you'll save that image out at those specific dimensions, and you'll drop it into that image widget. Under the original image size, you'll want to make sure to select original size so that it displays at the exact size that you uploaded it. All right, and that way you don't have to worry about any of the optimization potentially changing that size. All right, so hopefully that provides some answers to those questions that we're getting about, what size are the images supposed to be for this banner or that banner, and things like that. All right, feel free to chime in with any additional questions that you guys have through the chat. We'll keep looking through that chat throughout the session and pulling in from those questions. All right, so let me just cancel out of these changes here. And we'll get back to our store dashboard. All right, so we've got another question here related to package pricing. Is there an option to offer a package like, for example, 36 one color Gildan 5000 shirts for $100? So there is a way you could do that in DecoNetwork. For that, we'll jump into the products page. And here in the products page, let me see. I don't know that I have the 5000 added in here, but let me do a search. No, it doesn't look like I do, so I'll just use one of these other items as an example. Um, let's take this. Oh, that's a pocket tee. We'll use this V-neck as the example. Uh, so in order to do a package product, it actually requires setting up a specific item for that package, right? So I'm going to base my package off this 39 VR item here. I'm going to create a copy of it. You could either create a copy of an existing blank, or you could create a custom product as well. You could add it from scratch. For the sake of time in today's session here, I'm just going to copy a blank item that I already have. All right, and then it's as simple as modifying the details of that blank for your purpose. So I'm going to say, I'm going to call this product the one color print special. I'll leave the product code the same. I'll leave the description the same. Let's say for this special, it's only going to be white shirts. So I can go ahead and disable the other colors on that item. All right, and maybe this is perhaps only a couple of decoration methods here. We'll say DTG and screen printing. Let's go ahead and save those changes so far. So right now we've changed the name of the item. We've set what colors are going to be available. As far as pricing, first we'll want to actually look into quantities. So if we go into minimum quantities and bundles here, what you would want to do is set the minimum quantity matching, whatever special you want to offer. The question here says 36, so I'll set my minimum quantity to 36, and then I can offer this in bundles. So I could say I'll specify my own custom bundles, and really there's only, well, there could be one bundle, or if you want to allow the user to add on to that. So 36 maybe is 100. If they keep adding, they can order as many of these bundles as they want. That's up to you. I'm going to leave mine as just, a single item here of 36 quantity. And then we can jump into the pricing section. So as far as pricing, rather than using the supplier cost plus markup model, because this is a special and you have a certain price for it, we can go in and say specify a blank product price. And we'll use the single price option, and we'll say it's going to be $100. Right, so you'll specify that price. Now, the easiest way to do that is for the price that we're setting here to be inclusive of any decoration price. So we may have to elaborate on that question, but I'm assuming that special would be like for one print location, one color, one print. So that item, you may actually end up disabling some of these other decoration locations. So let's say it's only for a full front. You can go ahead and kind of delete some of these alternate areas. So we can just leave the front open. And that way we can leave that flat price of 100 set there. The last thing you would want to do is zero out your print prices, right? Because the blank product price is now inclusive of the print pricing for this special. And the way you do that is by pressing the configure icon next to your decoration prices. There you'll see the option to switch over to custom pricing and to edit that price. So you'll get a pop-up that looks like this, where you can say, for printing, I do not want to use the default pricing, and for screen printing, I do not want to use the default pricing. Once you uncheck those, this price field is going to open up for you, and you can go ahead and override the default price. So I'm going to set that down to 0. And so now if we look at our pricing breakdown here, I've set a blank product price of $100, and my decoration pricing is down to 0. Right? So it's going to be that $100 charge for this specific item. Now it does mean that when you're doing the marketing on your site, you're going to want to market this specific product, right? You may have another version of the Gildan 5000 somewhere else in your site, which is just kind of the standard for someone. Maybe they want to do a one-off DTG print or something like that. But for this special, it has that specific pricing. It's for 36 pieces, and it has those details. So, maybe that means adding a product widget to your homepage, you know, our special 36 pieces with a link directly to that item, or with a link to load that item in the designer. All right, so that's a good question there. It is a common use case, especially we see it a lot with team shops where you might have a bundle type of deal where it's one product that is going to include a uniform, a shirt, some shorts, some gloves, something like that, right? A package deal. So I see that this example here is similar to those types of setups. And really the summary of how you do those is you create one product that represents that bundle or that variety of items. All right, so follow-up question here. If they're designing the special item and change the product in the designer, is there a warning or anything that says the deal no longer exists? There wouldn't be. The system, as far as your website, the system's not going to know, this is a special item. The only thing that sets it as a special item is the information that you're setting on it, the name, the pricing, and things like that. So as far as the system's concerned, it's just like any other blank product. So there isn't going to be a warning shown to the user. You could potentially, modify your designer page to add some warnings like that. I'm not sure how extensive this special is in your business model there, but if it's something that you do frequently, or it's a common thing, you may want to end up modifying the designer page to mention things like, special pricing only offered on special items or something like that, or make sure that your product name is very clear, that this is a special item. So really make it apparent to the end user, special item, which the product title will display there in the product section of the designer. So if they don't see that special item note, they'll know that they're no longer getting that special. All right, yeah, thanks for that great question. So let's see. Let's take a look at some other questions that we've been getting frequently through the support system. This next one, it's a little bit technical, but we do get it often enough that I think it does require some mentioning, and we don't necessarily have too much information available through our help system, so it is beneficial to go ahead and cover it. And that's this ability that we have for a system to set an order reply email. So by default, when you sign up for DecoNetwork, um, there's certain emails that come from your DecoNetwork site to your end user, whether it's the email that they get when they place an order, when they register on your website, when you've shipped the order, things like that. All those emails come from the DecoNetwork system to the end user, and in some cases, if those emails are not tied to an order, they may come from a DecoNetwork email address, either no reply at deconetwork.com or help@deconetwork.com, depending on where that email is coming from. And it may be the case where for your business you have a custom email setup. So you've got at myprintingstore.com emails, and you might have a kind of generic address, info@myprintingshop.com. And so you might want to set that as your order reply email, so that instead of emails coming from no reply at deconetwork.com, they're coming from info@myprintshop.com. So that's what setting the order reply email takes care of. Now, there are other emails that the system sends which don't ever come from that DecoNetwork email address, and those would be any email associated with a quote or an order. So sending a quote to the customer, sending the quote for payment, for approval, sending the artwork approval, all of those order type actions come from a unique email address that allows DecoNetwork to track the communication between the end user and that email. So the benefit of that is, let's say sorry about that, guys. I am back on. Looks like I froze up there at some point. I'm not sure what you guys heard up to, but let me just jump right back into it. So I was covering order reply email address option in DecoNetwork, which, to summarize here again, I'm not sure how much you guys heard, allows you to set an alternate email address that emails come from to your end user. So normally they would come from an email address like help or no reply at deconetwork.com. Or if they're tied to an order action, they're actually going to come from a unique one-time specific email address, which allows DecoNetwork to track the communication between your customer and the Business Hub. So all of the email communication is actually recorded in Business Hub under the email history tab. But in some cases, you may want to go ahead and set the order reply email address so that those emails that do occasionally come from a DecoNetwork address would instead come from your own email address. So what does it take to go ahead and set your order reply email address? There's a few requirements. First of all, it needs to be an email address on a custom domain. So you can't, for example, set myprintshop at gmail.com. Right, that's not going to work. If I go ahead and save that, I'm going to get an error message that that email is not valid. All right, and the reason for that requirement is in order to validate the email that we're going to set here, we need to set what's called an SPF record. That SPF record is set against the web address, the domain of your email. And what an SPF record does is it provides authentication for DecoNetwork to send email on behalf of that domain name. So what it prevents or attempts to prevent is emails getting flagged as spam, right? So I could, for example, without that protection, I could, for example, say I want my email address to be chris@deconetwork.com. And if I'm not with DecoNetwork, I'm sending email through an @DecoNetwork address, but it's not actually DecoNetwork sending that email. So that has a lot of potential danger. So SPF record ensures that you're authorized to send email on behalf of that domain that's being used. So um, let's go ahead and set an example here of a valid address. Let me just go ahead and save that here. Let's see, I think I have this test domain set up. Nope, doesn't look like I do. But let's run through an example of the SPF record information that DecoNetwork requires. And that's going to be listed down here at the bottom of the order reply email page. Here you're going to see SPF details. And we're going to let you know that you need to set up an SPF record within your domain provider's DNS records, which authorizes DecoNetwork servers to send emails on your behalf or on behalf of that domain name. So these are the two servers that are going to be sending email, the ones that you'll need to authorize. And we show here an example SPF record. Now, this would be the SPF record that you set if your domain name does not already have an SPF record. We do get a lot of cases where someone's attempting to set the order reply email address and set this SPF record, but the issue comes in with that domain already having an SPF record. And that would be a common case if you use an email server separate from your domain provider, right? So maybe you've purchased a domain with GoDaddy, and that domain, you don't use the email provided there. Instead, you go to, let's say, Office 365 or Gmail, G Suite. One of these services that provides a bigger package in terms of email and maybe teamwork tools. So that's how you handle your email. And in those cases, those services will also ask you to set an SPF record so that they can send email on behalf of your domain. So again, your domain may already have an SPF record set, and DecoNetwork is asking you to set one. It's only valid to have one SPF record. So what you end up needing to do is combine those two records into a single one. And the example that I could give here, just a quick example. So this is the example record from DecoNetwork. You might have a separate example, let's say from Outlook.com, right, which is the Microsoft Office 365 email server. That might look something like this, right? V equals SPF1, include Outlook.com. So you'll notice that both of these SPF records start similarly. They both start with V equals SPF1, and they both end with some symbol and then the word all. So you can consider those as kind of the beginning and the end. And so basically what we need to do is we need to take one beginning, combine the two middle parts of both records, and leave just one end. So one beginning, both middles, and one end. So we could do that quickly here. I'll just take the middle of the DecoNetwork record, paste that into the middle of the second record. And just like that, I have the combined record for both DecoNetwork and my Outlook server. All right, so hopefully that clarifies SPF, setting up the SPF record for the order reply email address. Setting this SPF record is going to be a requirement for you to set that order reply email address. Without that, no matter what you enter into here, you'll always get that error message that it's not a valid email address. All right, perfect. So guys, feel free to pop any additional questions into the chat. If we don't have any additional questions, I can go ahead and jump on to the next tip. I'll give you guys a few seconds to chime in with any questions in case we have any pending. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the next tip here. This time we're going to jump into back into the main settings page of our admin area. And we're going to take a look at both payment methods and shipping methods. Um, so one of the scenarios that our clients do use from time to time is, they'll have a website where uh, they don't necessarily want to collect payment up front. So they want the end user to be able to submit orders through the website and pay at a later time. So there's a couple ways you can do that in DecoNetwork. You can do it through a manual payment method. So if I go into my payment methods page, down here at the bottom, I have my list of manual payment methods. And we have some default ones in here like in-person, check, telephone, bank transfer, things like that. These can be edited. And one of the options that you can select for these manual payment methods is the option for COD, cash on delivery or pickup. By selecting this option, you're telling the system when the order comes through with this payment selected, allow it to move forward through production. So it's essentially bypassing the payment requirement. Normally, if you have this option disabled, when an order comes in through this payment method, you would need to confirm that payment before that order moved into production. So by setting COD, you're allowing that order to move through without confirming that the payment has been received, which makes sense for, again, for that cash on delivery type of setup. So you can do it there through the manual payment method. You can also do it for a shipping method. So if I, for example, take a look at the standard shipping method, here we also have the option. Let me just uncheck this is free shipping. Actually, that's my UPS Live one. So let me add a custom one here. So with these custom shipping methods, we also have an option there for this is COD shipping method. And by setting a shipping method to COD, it has that similar setup. The order is going to come through with a manual payment called COD. It's going to move through production without taking upfront payment. Um, so, at a later time, once the order has been produced and maybe the customer comes to pick it up, you can go ahead and confirm the payment at that point. All right, so hopefully that's a useful tip there. There's actually two ways to do a COD type of setup, both through the manual payment methods as well as the shipping methods. All right, we are getting close to the end of today's session. While I wait for some questions, I'll just do a reminder as far as the scheduling. Um, the next session is going to be on Wednesday, July 18th. So do tune in to that one at the same time. So 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern here on YouTube Live. All right. The next tip that I want to cover is actually it's a bit of a preview of what's coming down the line in terms of the next update, and that's related to the tax improvement that we're making in the next version. So there's a bit of an overhaul in terms of taxes and tax configuration in the next minor update. Uh, the primary difference between what we have today and what's in the next update is before the next update, or rather in the current version, um, when you sign up for DecoNetwork, based on your region, we would add a locked tax that you could not edit. So for example, here in California, my systems had, the base rate for California, 7.25%, I think, tax, and I didn't have access to edit that. Now in my specific county, Orange County, the rate is actually much higher. I think it's like 8.5 or something like that. So, um, you know, what I would need to do in that case is add a second tax on top of the base California's tax to get me up to that 8.5 that I would need to charge. So it required kind of creating these additional taxes to get to your total. Um, so what we've done in this new version, we're now allowing you to edit that default tax. It also means that we no longer maintain that list of tax rates. So it was common, for example, for a state to change its tax rate, and we were not necessarily aware of that. So it was basically based on user feedback. We would hear back, this tax rate has changed. Can you guys update it? We would go ahead and update that right away. But by empowering the user to change that default tax rate, you no longer have to do that, right? As soon as it changes, you can go in and change it yourself. So there's a little bit more flexibility in the new system. In addition to that, taxes can be set to apply within specific zip code regions. So when you go in to edit a tax rate, down at the bottom, you have this location filter section where you can enter in a comma separated list of zip codes. And if an order comes through and it's not one of the zip codes listed in this filter, it won't apply that tax. So previously, we haven't had that type of granularity. Tax application has been based strictly on state or country. So you could select a country and specific states within that country. Now, in addition to that, you can also do a zip code filter. So that's pretty beneficial. Um, in terms of how you can set this zip code filter, like I mentioned, it can be a comma separated list of zip codes. It can also be ranges. So I've got 3 zip codes here, but I could also add an additional comma there, and then I could say, 80,000 through 84,000. So maybe there's a specific range that I want to cover. I can go ahead and type that hyphen character and create a range of zip codes that tax is going to apply for. All right, so um, those 2 changes there, being able to edit your system tax and apply zip code filters, uh, give you a lot more flexibility in terms of how you're going to charge your taxes to your end customer. And in addition to those changes, we also have introduced the idea of tax groups. So um, you can create tax groups, which are essentially a combination of several tax rates. And this is useful primarily for Business Hub, where you might be creating a quote for a customer or an order for a customer, and there's specific. In addition to taxes, there might be additional uh, duty fees that you need to charge against them. And so what you might do is, create a tax group for my wholesale customers, a tax group for my, Canadian customers. And so that tax group will have all of the tax rates and all of the duty fees that you've set up as taxes in the system, so that you can quickly select, for this quote, for this customer, I want to use my taxes group. For this other order, I want to use my Canadian taxes group. So it's a lot faster to select which taxes you're going to apply on a quote or order basis. You also get that flexibility at the product level. So for individual products, you can say which tax group they apply in. So under taxes, you have a lot more granularity to select from. You can use the system default, which is whatever taxes apply either based on the state filtering or the zip code filtering, or you could specify a custom one and say, for this specific product, um, apply only this tax rate. All right, so definitely a lot of tax enhancements coming down in this next update. So look forward to those. That update should be coming soon here in the next couple weeks or so. All right, we might have time for an additional question here since we got started a little bit late here with the technical difficulty. So I'll give a little bit of time in case anyone else has any additional questions that they want to chime in with, either on anything new or anything that we discussed throughout the session as well. All right, great. Yeah, it looks like we don't have any questions. Feel free to, if you're going to join back in, continue to join in into these sessions. Feel free to prepare those questions beforehand. We have time throughout the session to answer your guys' questions. For now, we've been kind of covering tips and things like that, but uh, you know, we're definitely happy to answer the questions that you, the users, have for us. So come in with those questions. Again, these sessions are every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Eastern. All right, we're going to go ahead and close off the session for today. Thanks for joining in, guys, and we'll catch you on the next one.